Well, let's talk a little more extensively now about the sanctuary itself. As I said, the sanctuary is 500 seats. There's a 60-person choir loft. We have a pretty large chancel area. There will be a prayer rail across the front of the chancel area. That will give us the ability to have times of prayer. As we think about communion, we may actually take communion the way we take it now, and then people can go and kneel. Or we may actually have a particular service where people kneel and you're served at the kneeling rail. But we think that's a part of this. Obviously, one of the things that we think that makes it more formal is more of the shape of the building, and the center aisle makes it a little bit more formal. We believe this will be a great place for traditional worship. We think it'll be a great place for weddings, which we've never had much of a wedding ministry. We believe that will be a great place for concerts and recitals, groups that come in and do more formal kind of recitals and things like that. And then memorial services. We think this will be an appropriate space for that as well. As you begin to look at this space, one of the things that we do is to notice that there's a lot of different details in a building like this. And I'm going to start kind of from the top and go to the bottom if we could. The first thing is to say is that the roof line is very high. This is a very high roof. If you look at it in comparison to our current building, you can kind of see it's quite a bit taller than what we have. So one of the first things you're going to notice when you come into this room is this very high ceiling. Now, the roof line actually has two levels. Part of the roof line, which is seen here with the stained glass, and the roof line comes up, and then it takes a 90-degree turn. It goes up, and there's some natural light windows that are up towards the middle part of the ceiling. You probably see it better on this rendering. Here are the stained glass windows. There's the roof line. Then you can see it comes up again. There's the natural light windows, and it goes up again. So it's kind of got this two-tiered effect in terms of the roof line. Now, as we look at it then on the inside, one of the things that we recognize is a very familiar type of look, very similar to what we have in the worship center. Big steel beams and that kind of inlaid wood ceiling. And we think that's always been one of the most beautiful parts of our current worship center. We wanted to bring that over into the sanctuary, and so we will. As you come back around, there'll be a large cross in the center that we'll have. Then there'll be a large choir area. You can see that the choir area is elevated beyond the platform itself. We think it'll be a great spot for our choir to be able to sing. We've got storage behind each of these brown areas, and the storage areas will allow us to have places to do preparation for worship. But there's a lot of things that you have to have in terms of preparing for worship and storage for seasonal kinds of things that we use in the worship center. We've got storage to be able to do that. The other thing then I think that's important is to understand that we're also going to have to do some audio-visual work in here as well. Obviously, we've got to have a good sound system in here. If your ceiling's going to be that high, getting the sound right is really going to be important because it's going to be a really big, tall room. So we've got to be able to do that. We'll have an acoustician and an audiovisual consultant that will help us with that. The other thing is we will put in multimedia screens and projectors in here. Now, they will roll up and roll down like they do now, but we're going to put a screen here and a screen on the other side. And the reason that we're going to have those screens in place is because we will use them in worship some, not exclusively. I mean, like right now, if I want to show a movie clip or something like that, I've still got to have access to be able to do that. More importantly, though, what we have found over the last 2 or 3 years is that most people that do memorial services want to do a slideshow. And it would be a shame for us to have somebody that comes in and says this would be a very appropriate place for a memorial service. But now I've got a slideshow of my loved one, and we're having to bring in a portable screen and a portable projector, and it just doesn't work. We need to have the technology because we're going to use it going forward. Even if we don't use it all the time, having access to be able to use it will be important. So we'll have multimedia and good sound in this room as well. When you get up onto the altar area, you see that there's a baptismal font, there's an altar table, there'll probably be a lectern. We don't think there'll be a pulpit Part of the thing is, if you put a pulpit up there, I'm just not going to stand behind it. So instead of having a piece of furniture that I bump into and all of that, there'll probably be a lectern up there and an altar table and obviously a baptismal font. All right, let's talk about the chairs, because that's probably been the greatest amount of discussion we've had in all of these meetings has been over the seating in this place. We believe that we will have a chair system. We do not believe it will be this chair system. These chairs look like banquet chairs. They kind of look like the chairs that are in it. This is not what we will have. What we will have is actually a chair system where there is a place to put hymnals, a place to put cards, those kinds of things. Now, the question comes up, why would we do chairs instead of pews? Well, there's a couple, three reasons for it. The first one goes back to the original discussion that we had about the site. And that is that someday, 12, 15 years from now, if we build a much bigger worship space in which we do put pews, the space we are building now will become kind of a narthex or a foyer into the bigger worship space. If that's the case, we would have to basically remove the pews from inside here. So, if somebody gave a pew in memory of someone, I cannot guarantee them that that pew's not going to get taken out and will not be relocated. I mean, I can't guarantee them that we won't have the ability to relocate it. So because of that, that's one reason. Not the only reason, though. The second thing is that as we look at this space and we think about chairs, is that we believe that you can actually seat more people in chairs. Now, why is that? Well, one of the reasons is just because as you've come in today, you've noticed that you have about 22 inches, right, that you're seated on. That's your 22 inches. And you came in and you sat down and said, okay, I need to be responsible for my 22 inches. If you have a pew, when people first sit down in a pew, they kind of think, I have 22, 27, 35, 36 inches. And so what we believe is that you actually will be able to seat more people in chairs. The final thing, though, and I think this is the more compelling reason for me, is although we will not set up and take this room down very often, there may be times when we have a group in that needs some more space at the front. Let's say there's a community choral group that's doing something and they're bringing some more instrumentation in. We may want to be able to take out the first 2 or 3 rows. If we have pews, we won't be able to do that. So I don't see us taking this out, setting it up, and all those kinds of things. But I do think there'll be a time it's appropriate when you take out 2 or 3 rows at the front to make something else happen. And the chairs give us that flexibility. Here's what I know. The same people that make the chairs are the same people that make the pews. And so we're going to have discussions with them this summer, and we're going to run all the traps on that. We're going to say, okay, what's the cost differential? Can you seat more people in pews or in chairs? And we're going to let them help us make that decision. But if you ask me today, I think in terms of the weather report, it's about 80% probability that we're going to have chairs and only about 20% probability that we're going to have pews. That seems to be the way the discussion is going at this point. So that's what the seating will be like in this area as well. Now, the other thing that we've got to find out in this area is that obviously we've got to have some instrumentation that's going to be able to drive the music in there. And we've asked Bill and Laurie Roberts to begin to look at what kind of music instrument could be used in here. We think it's probably going to be something like an electronic organ. Bill and Laurie, you've got to have something that's going to push enough sound in this room to be able to make it work. It would be a shame to have a great place for a wedding, and it's just what the bride wants, right? She feels really good about it. And then you've got this piano that can't be heard loud enough when she wants to walk down the aisle. So we've got to find the right kind of thing. Bill and Laurie are going to be looking at that, and we're looking forward to kind of finding out what that's going to be. I don't believe that it will be a pipe organ.